All right, let's get real for a moment, you and I. There's a part of you, isn't there, a corner of your inner world you rarely, if ever, speak of. Not to your closest friends, maybe not even to your partner. Perhaps, if you're truly honest, not even to yourself. You might try to brush it off, maybe crack a joke to deflect, or even wrap it up in some kind of moral judgment. Or, like so many of us, you just keep scrolling, hoping it'll go away. But then, in those quiet, solitary hours, late at night, when the world outside is hushed and no one's watching, that's when it starts to whisper. Or sometimes it roars. A desire so unfiltered, so raw, it can be downright confusing. And this isn't the Hollywood glossed version of desire, not the stuff of polite dinner party conversation. This isn't always about love in the romantic sense, or even what we typically label as heat. This digs deeper. It's about power control submission. It's tangled up with shame, with wild fantasies, and sometimes with a profound fear. The great thinker Carl Jung wasn't one to shy away from these murky depths of the human soul. He had a name for it, the sexual shadow. And this, in many ways, is the heart of shadow work, the courageous process of integrating what we've been taught to fear, deny, or reject within ourselves. And here's the crucial part: Jung didn't label it as evil. He didn't say it's something to be stamped out or destroyed. No, he proposed something far more challenging, far more uncomfortable. For many of us, he said it needs to be integrated. Because here's the truth. He laid bare, if you don't consciously turn and face this sexual shadow, it will find a way to face you. This is the essence of shadow work. Not destroying the shadow, but making it conscious before it unconsciously takes over your life. And often it shows up in ways you can't predict, ways that can quietly, or not so quietly, wreak havoc through relentless obsessions, the grip of addiction, relationships that mysteriously sabotage themselves, a creeping emotional numbness, those sudden gut-wrenching bursts of shame, or those frustrating patterns that keep playing out in your life, no matter how desperately you try to change. You see, the sexual shadow isn't just about some repressed lust. It's the sum total of every part of your sexuality, your aliveness that somewhere along the line you were told or made to feel was wrong, dirty, dangerous, or simply unworthy of love. It's that desire you learned to deny, that experience you buried deep down, that fantasy you judged yourself harshly, or that tender vulnerability you never, ever allowed yourself to truly feel. It lives in the basement of your psyche, this shadow, and just like any shadow, ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. Oh no, it waits. It gathers strength. And eventually, it makes its presence known often in ways that leave you feeling bewildered and, frankly, pretty scared. Maybe you find yourself lashing out at people who for some reason ignite that spark of desire in you. Or perhaps you're caught in a cycle of chasing empty encounters because genuine intimacy feels utterly terrifying. Maybe there's a part of you that craves being dominated, or feels an urge to dominate, and the shame that follows is crushing. Perhaps you've learned to confuse love with performance, or you feel a disheartening numbness during sex. Or worse, maybe there are times you feel nothing at all. And the first thought is usually, something's wrong with me. You might label it dysfunction, but Jung would gently correct us. He'd say it's not dysfunction, it's disconnection. You're not broken. You're divided. And that part of you that's been exiled, the part you've shamed or labeled as sick or sinful, that has become your shadow. But here's the kicker. It's not just hiding. It's actively trying to come home. The sexual shadow is that potent, often turbulent place where your deepest wounds collide with your most primal instincts. It's where repression, twists into distortion, where unaddressed shame festers into obsession. It's where the parts of yourself you haven't loved can in a way become dangerous to your peace, to your relationships, to your own sense of self. Jung gave us a stark warning. What you do not make conscious will come back as fate. And believe me, nothing returns with more relentless power than repressed sexual energy. Why? Because it's not just energy, it's your identity, it's your longing. It's the most honest, untamed part of your humanity desperately trying to break through to the surface, to be seen, to be acknowledged. And yet, it's the elephant in the room that most of us, most of the time, studiously ignore. Not in therapy, not in our spiritual practices, sometimes not even in the privacy of our own thoughts. We keep it locked down, hidden away because it doesn't fit the carefully curated image we're trying to project to the world and to ourselves. The good man, the pure woman, the enlightened soul, the emotionally healed, mentally evolved, morally untouchable version of who we think we should be. But behind that flawless mask, the shadow burns. And the more ferociously you try to suppress it, the more insidious its control over you becomes. You'll see its fingerprints on your fantasies, those uninvited guests in your mind that you can't seem to forget. You'll feel it in dreams that leave you shaken to your core. You'll recognize it in relationship dynamics, where you find yourself playing out roles you don't consciously choose or understand. It's there in that sudden, inexplicable wave of guilt that crashes over you when you dare to feel good, to feel pleasure. It's in that quiet panic that bubbles up when you feel someone is seeing too much, getting too close to the real you. Because sometimes the sexual shadow isn't a roar, it's a profound, deafening silence. A silence so deep it morphs into detachment. A disconnection so subtle, so pervasive, it can start to feel normal. You might call it low libido. You might chalk it up to just stress, or tell yourself it's simply a sign of maturity. But if we're truly honest beneath it all, it's a form of grief. A quiet mourning for the parts of you that were never given permission to be real. For the desire that never found its language. For the attraction that never felt like it had a safe home. For the personal power that was always deemed too much. Now Jung wasn't saying we should let this shadow run wild and obey its every impulse. Not at all. His wisdom was far more nuanced. He said it is to be known, to be seen, to be invited in, not as an enemy, but as a misunderstood part of yourself. It's about opening a dialogue. Because the moment you begin that courageous conversation, something truly transformative starts to happen. You begin to stop fearing yourself. You start to let go of the need to apologize for simply being human in all your messy, beautiful complexity. And that, my friends, is when you embark on the terrifying yet exquisitely beautiful process of becoming whole. Now let's be crystal clear about something this journey, this courageous act of turning towards your shadow. It's not about mindlessly indulging every single impulse that bubbles up. Far from it. This is about something much more profound. It's about developing the wisdom to understand where that impulse is truly coming from. What is it trying to whisper, or sometimes scream to you? What part of your soul, long dormant, is it trying to awaken? Because here's a truth that can change everything beneath the often turbulent surface of the sexual shadow. There's something incredibly sacred. It's your soul's unmet, undeniable need for wholeness. And I'm not just talking about physical wholeness. This is about emotional wholeness, energetic alignment, a deep soul-level integration. So that sexual shadow, it's not proof that you're somehow sick or broken. Think of it more like this. It's compelling evidence that you've become fragmented, and it's an invitation A profound calling to finally bravely reclaim all those precious pieces of yourself that got buried along the way. Carl Jung, in his infinite wisdom, once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And this right here is where that transformative work begins. Not by escaping into fantasy, not by doubling down on denial, but by daring to ask yourself a single brutally honest question. What part of your desire, your aliveness, have you buried deep down? And what truly has it cost you to keep it hidden all this time? That question, that's the first courageous crack in the shell. The truth, the one that can set you free, is that your sexual shadow isn't your enemy. It's the lost part of you yearning to come home. And there's a powerful reason you were taught or learned to hide it. It wasn't just your parents or religion or the culture you grew up in, though they all play a part. Jung believed it's woven into the very architecture of our psyche. He taught that the human mind doesn't just develop as one neat, unified whole. It splits, it fragments, it builds walls, not out of malice, but as a strategy for survival. Think about it when you were young. Anything that felt unsafe, anything that wasn't accepted, anything that felt socially dangerous, that part of you got pushed underground. This isn't a design flaw. It's a sophisticated defense mechanism. The ego, your conscious self, diligently protects what it believes will help you navigate and function in the world, and it meticulously buries everything else. That buried everything else, that becomes the shadow. And when it comes to our sexuality, this fragmentation often happens early, and sometimes quite forcefully. Because desire at its core isn't just about the act of sex, it's about raw instinct, untamed expression, profound vulnerability, and, yes, even power and control. It's often the first time a child feels something immensely powerful surging within them that they simply don't have the words for. And if that potent, innocent energy is met with shame, with punishment, or even with a deafening silence, it gets severed. The child learns deep in their bones, this part of me is not safe. This part of me is bad. This part of me must be hidden. And what gets hidden doesn't just politely disappear. It mutates. It distorts. Jung warned us that anything buried in the unconscious will inevitably find its way to the surface. But here's the catch, it rarely comes back in its original pure form. Oh no. It resurfaces disguised as persistent fear, as an undeniable compulsion, as a sharp projection onto others. Why? Because the unconscious mind doesn't play by the rules of logic. It speaks a different language. The language of symbols. It communicates through sudden attractions, inexplicable revulsions, vivid fantasies, and that nagging sense of discomfort you can't quite shake. It will often project your unowned, disavowed sexual energy onto the people around you. You might find yourself becoming inexplicably obsessed with individuals who seem to embody the very qualities, the very desires you've pushed down in yourself. You'll judge them fiercely. You'll desire them intensely. You might even hate them or feel an overwhelming urge to save them. But if you look closer, what you're really doing in those moments is desperately trying to reclaim a lost part of yourself. This is the subtle, powerful trap of projection. The psyche, in its relentless drive for wholeness, tries to complete itself through others. You think it's about them. It's almost never just about them. It's about you. That woman you can't stop thinking about, the one who both fascinates and unnerves you. That man you feel an irresistible pull towards yet simultaneously resent. Those people you secretly envy or quietly judgmentally shame. They are, in essence, holding up a mirror. Jung famously said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And this, my friends, includes and perhaps especially includes our sexual reactions. So, the next time someone makes you deeply uncomfortable or sparks an intense reaction, pause and ask yourself, what are they expressing that I've ruthlessly suppressed in myself? Is it a sense of wild freedom? Is it an unapologetic dominance? Is it a tender softness, a raw, unashamed need? Is it the capacity for pleasure without a shred of guilt? Whatever it is that triggers you, that captivates you, that repels you, chances are it's a piece of your story too. It's just been living in your shadow, waiting to be seen. And here's the hard truth. As long as it stays buried, you will never be truly, wholly free. Because repression, you see, doesn't magically lead to virtue or purity. It leads to fragmentation. It leads to a life half-lived. You might smile politely on the outside, say all the right things, masterfully perform emotional intelligence. But beneath that carefully constructed surface, something vital is slowly suffocating. The more polished and refined you become on the outside, often the more chaos quietly builds within. Your body, you know, it remembers what your mind tries so hard to deny. It aches in the quiet moments. It sends out subtle and sometimes not so subtle signals. It triggers you when you least expect it, in ways that seem to come out of nowhere. Desire doesn't just vanish because you've become an expert at ignoring it. It becomes shadow-bound. And the deeper it hides, the more extreme, the more distorted its expressions can become. That's why so many people, perhaps more than we realize, find themselves living these strange double lives. One life is clean, curated, rational, and socially acceptable. The other, hidden life, is chaotic, compulsive, and riddled with contradictions they can't begin to explain even to themselves. This isn't hypocrisy, not really. It's a painful symptom of profound disconnection. And the more disconnected you are from your own shadow, the more unspoken power it holds over your life. Jung described this journey beautifully and chillingly. He said, "The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door whose painful constriction no one is spared, who goes down to the deep well. It's not an easy path, but it's the path to coming home to yourself." And here's the profound promise, the light at the end of that tight passage Jung spoke of. But on the other side of that door is wholeness. You see your shadow, and especially your sexual shadow. It's not just some dark cellar where your wounds and fears are stored. No, it's so much more than that. It's also where your energy lives, your raw vitality, your untamed aliveness, your innate capacity to truly connect, to create with passion, to experience a joy so pure. It isn't filtered through layers of shame or self-doubt. This is the hidden truth, the one that so many of us miss. Most people aren't perpetually tired because of sheer physical exhaustion. They're tired, bone-deep tired, because they are constantly, relentlessly suppressing themselves. The monumental effort it takes to always look appropriate, to feel what you think you should feel, to want only what's deemed acceptable. That kind of internal policing day in and day out, it drains the very soul. Jung saw this pattern clearly in the people he worked with. He recognized that what we often label as neurosis is in many cases simply the painful result of someone trying to avoid legitimate, necessary suffering. The suffering that comes with growth and self-confrontation. And the tragic irony, people end up suffering anyway. But instead of moving through the discomfort and emerging stronger, they get stuck, looping endlessly in shame and self-recrimination. So what's the way out of this labyrinth? It's not about reckless indulgence. It's not about iron-fisted control or trying to sterilize every messy human emotion. The path forward, the key that unlocks that door, is awareness. It's about having the courage to sit quietly with those parts of yourself that make you squirm, the ones that make you deeply uncomfortable. It's about daring to ask, where did I learn to fear this part of myself? Who or what taught me that this was wrong, shameful, or dangerous? And what might happen if I allowed myself to simply feel it, not to act on it impulsively, not to immediately suppress it, but just to acknowledge its presence, to let it be. That is how genuine integration begins, not by moralizing your shadow, judging it from a pedestal, and certainly not by glorifying or worshiping it either. It begins by entering into a relationship with it, a curious, compassionate, and honest dialogue. This is the real work, shadow work, where healing begins not by fixing ourselves, but by understanding what we've been running from. Because until you do, your powerful sexual energy will remain fragmented. It will continue to leak out in unpredictable, often unmanageable ways. It will sow seeds of confusion, fuel guilt, sabotage your best intentions, and create a chilling silence where connection ought to be. But something truly magical happens once you begin to name it, to understand its origins, to bravely bring it out of the shadows and into the light of your conscious awareness. It begins to transform. That raw, often chaotic energy, it doesn't disappear, it alchemizes. It becomes authentic power. Not the power of domination over others, but the power of personal agency of choice. It becomes true presence. Not a performance for an audience, but a deep, embodied sense of being fully here. It shifts from a hollow emptiness to a rich, vibrant embodiment. You'll find you no longer need to desperately chase external things to feel a fleeting sense of wholeness. And you'll no longer feel compelled to suppress vital parts of yourself just to feel safe or acceptable. You begin to stand tall in your full, authentic being, raw, honest, and beautifully integrated. Jung reminded us that wholeness is not the same as perfection. Far from it. He said, wholeness is the union of opposites. And nowhere is that sacred union more profoundly necessary, more life-altering than in how you relate to and experience your own desire. You are not wrong for wanting. You are not broken for feeling. But you are at risk, a deep soul-level risk, if you continue to live a life divided, caught between the truth of who you are and the illusion of who you think you should be. Because that shadow, it will not remain silent forever. And if you don't willingly, consciously open the door to it, it will eventually find a way to break through the wall. My invitation to you, from the deepest part of me, is to let it speak now, while its voice can still be heard, with a measure of gentleness. Before it's forced to come back louder, more disruptive. Before it returns, as Jung warned, as an unchosen fate. You might think you're in complete control. You might believe you're consciously choosing who you're attracted to, who you fall in love with, who you decide to push away, who you find yourself endlessly chasing. But beneath every one of those decisions, there's an invisible map, a blueprint you likely didn't even know you were following. A map drawn by unspoken silences, by layers of shame, by the echoes of your childhood, the subtle currents of your culture, the imprints of trauma, and the aching absence of what was never allowed. This is the core of Carl Jung's profound warning to us all. He said, what we fail to make conscious becomes fate. And nowhere does that warning echo with more startling clarity, more poignant urgency than in the landscape of your sexuality. Because you can build a seemingly beautiful life on the surface. You can achieve career success, find a partner, maintain a busy schedule, and wear a convincing smile. But if your sexual shadow is still buried, ignored, and unacknowledged, your life from the inside out will slowly, insidiously become unrecognizable even to yourself. You might wake up one day next to someone you realize you don't truly feel. You'll go through the motions of touch, but without genuine presence. You'll find yourself staying in relationships that subtly numb your spirit, while simultaneously sabotaging or running from the ones that make you feel too much, too alive, too vulnerable. You'll start to confuse emotional safety with a dull, lifeless boredom. You'll shy away from depth because it unknowingly reminds you of old, unhealed pain. You'll find yourself inexplicably craving what wounds you and unconsciously rejecting what could truly heal you. And you won't have the first clue why. But Jung understood. He knew with a clarity that can be unsettling what happens when a person consistently refuses to meet their own shadow. They don't just become detached from parts of themselves, they become profoundly divided. And a divided self inevitably creates divided relationships. You'll be physically present but emotionally miles away. Sexually active, perhaps, but psychologically shut down, walled off. You might even find yourself smiling during moments of intimacy, while deep inside a vital part of you quietly disappears. And slowly, inevitably, your partner will feel it. They might not have the words for it. They might not understand what's missing, but they will feel the vacancy, the subtle chill in the air. They'll likely think it's about them. They'll start to blame themselves. They'll question their own worth, their desirability. But in reality, what they're often experiencing is the profound loneliness of standing in the presence of someone who hasn't yet had the courage to truly face themselves. And this right here is how the unacknowledged sexual shadow so often so tragically destroys relationships. Not through loud arguments or dramatic betrayals, but through a slow, creeping vacancy. Through an emptiness where connection should be. You simply can't give what you haven't first reclaimed within yourself. You can't truly connect with another if you yourself are split in two. You can't touch another soul with authenticity and depth if you're still at some level afraid of your own. And perhaps the most terrifying part of all this, people adapt. We humans are incredibly adaptable. We can make numbness feel normal. We can rationalize the absence of passion and call it stability. We learn to label the quiet desperation as maturity. We try to convince ourselves and others that the vibrant fire that once moved so powerfully through us was just a fleeting folly of youth. But deep down in the quietest chambers of the heart, they know. We know. They know. Deep down in that sacred, silent space within, they know they buried something real, something vital. And no amount of outward performance, no carefully constructed facade can ever truly replace what's been lost. This is the hidden, devastating consequence of an unreclaimed sexual shadow. You don't just lose passion, that fiery spark. You lose presence. You lose the ability to be fully there in your life, in your relationships, in your own skin. And when presence dies, love, no matter how well-intentioned, slowly devolves into mere maintenance. A checklist, an obligation. But the damage, it doesn't stop neatly at the borders of your relationships. Oh no, it seeps like an invisible ink into how you move through the entire world. It touches your creativity, dulling its vibrant edge. It casts a shadow over your spiritual life, making genuine connection feel distant. It hollows out your sense of meaning, leaving you wondering, is this all there is? Jung was so clear on this. The repression of our vital sexual energy leads to a psychic splitting, a fragmentation that doesn't just confine itself to the bedroom. It echoes in the very chambers of the soul. Because this energy, this force, it's not just physical. It is profoundly symbolic. It is archetypal. It is the raw, untamed creative force of your very being, desperately trying to move through you to express itself in the world. And when that magnificent force is blocked, dammed up by fear and shame, everything begins to slow down. You find yourself procrastinating, caught in endless loops of overthinking. You numb yourself with distractions. You live in a world of vivid fantasy instead of taking courageous action. You withhold your truth, your voice, your unique gifts, instead of expressing them freely. And the insidious part, all of it, the avoidance, the hesitation, the self-censorship, it all feels so logical, so justified, so reasonable. But let me be clear, it's not reason. It's resistance. You are, in essence, resisting life itself, resisting the full, glorious, messy expression of who you are. And the cost of that resistance, it's almost invisible at first. A subtle dimming, a quiet ache, until one day it becomes everything. Until you catch your reflection and barely recognize the eyes staring back. Until your own voice sounds like a stranger's. Until you gradually, almost imperceptibly, stop expecting anything truly extraordinary, anything deeply fulfilling to happen to you. You might call it burnout or chronic fatigue, but Jung would call it what it is: disintegration. You are piece by piece, being dismantled by your own courageous, yet ultimately self-defeating refusal to feel. And let's be honest, the society we live in often only reinforces this profound disconnection. We're immersed in a world that is simultaneously hypersexualized and emotionally sterile. We see sexuality plastered everywhere, to sell products, to drive clicks, to grab fleeting attention. But we rarely, if ever, sit with its sacred truth. We seldom dare to ask the uncomfortable questions. Why do we chase it so relentlessly, yet so rarely feel genuinely, deeply fulfilled by it? Why can we talk about the mechanics of sex so loudly, yet still feel such profound shame and silence around our own unique desires? Why do we often desire with such intensity, yet touch each other as if we're made of fragile glass, terrified of breaking or of being truly seen? It's because in many ways, society doesn't truly want your wholeness. It often thrives on your confusion, your fragmentation. The more disconnected you are from your own rich inner world, your own deep knowing, the easier you are to manipulate, to monetize, to distract. Your unaddressed shadow, in a strange and tragic way, becomes profitable for others. And you can stay stuck, half awake, half alive, chasing shadows instead of embodying your light. But Carl Jung didn't offer us a message of despair. Not at all. He offered a path of courageous confrontation. He taught us that facing your shadow, truly turning toward it with an open heart and mind, is the very beginning of profound transformation. That reclaiming your sexual shadow isn't just about healing past trauma, though that is a vital part of it. It's about reclaiming your authentic power. Because when you know, truly know what moves you, what ignites your soul, what your deepest truths are, you can no longer be so easily controlled by external forces. You stop craving empty validation from others. You stop settling for lifeless, performative intimacy. You stop shrinking your desires, your very essence, just to make others feel more comfortable. You stop using your sexuality as a mere performance, and you begin to live it as an embodied, sacred presence. But, and this is crucial, you must be willing to go through the fire. You must be willing to grieve the years you may have unknowingly betrayed yourself, the times you silenced your own heart. You must find the courage to feel the desires you've never dared to speak aloud even to yourself. You must be brave enough to admit with radical honesty that you may have been living a life that is only half yours. And that, my beautiful friend, is not weakness. That is not regression. That is the first, most courageous act of becoming truly, authentically whole. Because what the world often dismisses as darkness, Jung recognized as untapped potential. Pure, vibrant, life-giving potential. And the very moment you decide to turn and courageously face your shadow, your real life, the one you were always meant to live, begins. Not the life painstakingly built on denial, not the life carefully curated for the approval of others, but the magnificent, messy, authentic life that was patiently waiting underneath it all along. Your sexual shadow doesn't need to be fixed like a broken machine. It needs to be faced, to be met with compassion, curiosity, and courage. Because the only thing ultimately more dangerous than your own powerful desire is your persistent, fear-driven refusal to meet it. You've spent years, perhaps a lifetime, keeping this essential part of you locked away in the dark. Maybe you didn't mean to. Maybe you genuinely thought it would protect you. Maybe you were taught by well-meaning people that it was the right thing to do, to be clean, to be good, to be safe. But that part of you, the one you've buried, the one you've denied, silenced, and hidden away, it hasn't disappeared. It's still there. And it's waiting. Not to hurt you, not to control you, but simply profoundly to be seen. Because your sexual shadow is not evil. It is unintegrated life. It is unclaimed power. It is unmet truth. And it's not going anywhere. So the choice ultimately is yours. A choice that stands before you right now. You can keep hiding, keep performing, keep numbing. Or you can turn around with courage and with love and finally face what's been following you all along. That's the moment where shadow work becomes sacred, when reclaiming yourself becomes more important than pleasing the world. The choice is stark, yet profoundly liberating. Wholeness or performance. Presence or numbness. A life lived skimmed from the surface, or a life lived deeply authentically from the very core of your soul. If this resonates, if you feel that stirring within, that recognition of a truth you can no longer ignore, I invite you to declare it. Comment below. I'm ready to reclaim what I buried. Subscribe to this channel. Your channel name, e.g., Psychic Soulscapes or The Jungian Journey, for more explorations of Jungian truth, for more pathways to wholeness just like this. And please share this video with someone you know, someone you care about, who might still be living in fear of the beautiful, powerful truth that already resides inside them. Stop running. It's time to return. It's time to come home to yourself.